It is August 25th, 5 p.m., and I call this meeting of the North Brookfield Board of Selectmen to order. If you'll all rise and join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So our agenda tonight consists of just interviewing Adam LaMontagne for the town administrator position. And I guess we're gonna take turns asking questions. And we'll start off with tell us about yourself and why you'd like to be North Brookfield's town administrator.
Well, thank you, and I'm very impressed that you actually said my name correctly. I can't tell you how many times that people say that incorrectly, so thank you for that. I've had many years in municipal government, starting with the city of Chicopee. We're talking about a city of roughly 56,000 residents. I served there for nearly, in various different capacities, for nearly 10 years before I got appointed and brought on as a management fellow for the town of Templeton back in September of 2018. I got promoted to assistant town administrator the following year, and then I became the town administrator in November of 2020 and served in that capacity till March 17th of 2025. We had some issues over the school budget. Some difficult discussions occurred, and I was looking at various options for the district. Unfortunately, I didn't have the support of the select board. I made the decision to move on, and then the neighboring town of Phillipston hired me as their chief administrative officer in April of 2025, and I'm still in that role to this day. When I went into the role of chief administrative officer in Phillipston, they had an interim chief administrative officer. I worked closely with the board. As you know, in April, we're getting close to town meeting. My priority was to make sure the warrant was complete and accurate. I worked with both the select board over there as well as their finance committee, making sure that the warrant was complete, the budget was finalized, and town council review, and we got their warrant. We had our town meeting in May of 2025, very successful. All 32 articles passed in roughly an hour. Very efficient town meeting. Budget passed, everything passed there at the town meeting. And then I started working on other various projects for the town of Phillipston. I see here that in North Brookfield you have your own post office. That is great. Phillipston actually does not have a post office, so I'm working on, I wrote a letter to the Postmaster General over there, Doug Colino, requesting, not only do we, in Phillipston, do we not have a post office, we don't have a zip code. We actually share one with the neighboring town of Athol. So we're hopeful. I wrote a correspondence to the Postmaster General. We're still waiting a reply. But I am happy to see that you have your own post office. That's actually really a good thing for the community. And in addition to that, we actually had an old school that's sitting idle that the district moved on to the new building and sent all the Phillipston students over to the Templeton Elementary School. And at this point, I was working on to make sure that building's staying in compliance, look at various options for the select board to reutilize a building. My experience in disposition of public buildings, I was tasked when I started in Templeton with the Baldwinville Elementary School that the district closed. I was responsible for putting that up to bid. I put that out to bid twice. The first bidder, we had cannabis, the cannabis industry looking at that building. I think with the market, they were in Athol, and they actually ended up withdrawing and put that out to bid again. We were very successful getting MPZ development. After the bidding process, the select board awarded it to them. Right now, it's actually a current project going on in Baldwinville. We actually ended up selling the building for $400,000, and it's back on the tax rolls, and it's a $30 million investment in the community over there. I'm really proud of that project. I also worked on the CDBG grant for nearly $1.2 million to redo all the roads in that area. And if you ever drive through Baldwinville, that's something I'm really proud of. Every time I drive to work in Phillipston, I drive by that building and see that building's being utilized. That project is one of them I was very proud to accomplish with not just myself, but all the town departments. They worked collaboratively with me, and we were able to get that done. So I'm a very project-oriented town administrator or chief administrative officer. I really like, so also with that Phillips Memorial Building, we actually used, the previous CA before me with State Senator Durant secured a $50,000 earmark. We have since repaved that whole parking lot there. And we're also looking at all the other alternatives. We have an elevator there, make sure that's in compliance. We're looking at various reuse options. And we're also undergoing a town common study, which was appropriated out of their CPA money. They have a Community Preservation Act, and I don't believe you have that here. It's a really, those are resources that are available to the community. But there's a process, obviously, to adopt that. So basically, I want to introduce myself. I'm Matt Lamonti, and it was a pleasure meeting each and every single one of you. But the reason why I want to come to North Brookfield is I really want to expand my horizons and work for a town like this. It's in between Templeton and Phillipston. You're roughly at 5,000 residents. When I looked at it, reviewed it, I think you have a lot of, in meeting with your search committee, they're very smart people. You got Joe, you got Karen on there, you got really good people on there, and I've learned a lot about the town, interviewing, sitting down with them, how you have your ambulance set up as a 501c3, a nonprofit. I think there's a lot of options of utilization of ambulance receipts here. I think you have a pretty good structure. I do. I think putting together an organizational chart, a structure to build upon is like the building blocks, right? Mm-hmm. I think you have established a good thing here. I want to just be able to take that and take the next step, like you have school district options, reviewing what's available, what's the most cost effective, but providing the best education for your kids here in North Brookfield. How could you do that effectively, but at the same time, save taxpayers' money? It's always that balance, right? Mm-hmm. As you know, with the retirement cost, unfunded liabilities, it's a challenge. So whenever you go through your budget, you're working with your finance committee, your select board, I think you are a good town. I like your laid-back environment, I do. I think you have a good team, and I think I can make positive improvements here for the town of North Brookfield. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time and the opportunity to actually appear in front of your board and have this opportunity to sit down with all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in. Jamie?
Down the list. You tell us something about yourself that's not on your resume.
I went to the police academy and I didn't make it. But it was an experience. I didn't qualify my firearm, but sometimes those failures in life help you learn. I actually went back and finished my master's degree and went back into municipal government. That's not on my resume, but it's one of those failures. I remember day one of the academy, I left the city of Chicopee and I said, what am I doing here? But it was a great experience. I made a lot of good friends in the academy, and it made me appreciate the work that we have. We have really good police officers. They do a good job, and it's tough in this environment, especially after the COVID with cell phones and everything. Mm-hmm. We're very fortunate to have good public safety officers, and it was a great experience. And unfortunately, I was there for a few months, and it just didn't work out. So that's one of my failures. But it's taking those failures and moving on, and how you could succeed in other areas, right?
Excellent. Ralph?
Have you had the opportunity to watch our Board of Selectmen meetings or learn about our town?
I watched some of your meetings. I didn't get a chance to sit there and watch the whole meeting, but I am happy to see they have a cable access channel. You're able to put that out for your residents so they can learn about their government, because quite frankly, engagement with the community is vital. So that way, if you ever, let's say, had to do a Prop 2.5 override, or if you had to do a debt exclusion, because these are realities, right? I know they're not popular to do. Residents never want to see their taxes go up, but sometimes there's no other alternative. Like in Templeton, I have a bridge, a town-owned bridge, that's failing. It's failing. And we went forward with a debt exclusion, and it failed by 2 votes. So having that engagement, having your select board meetings televised so the public knows what's going on is absolutely vital for the success of your community. So I did watch some of your meetings. I didn't get a chance to watch all of them, but I have, and you have a good cable access channel.
What do you see as key issues for our town, and what can you do to, what what skills do you have that can help us create solutions?
I believe the key issues you have, like other communities, is the school district. I do. I think because you're a local district, looking at possibly making it a regional. Because you could be eligible for additional transportation dollars. I think that's going to require a feasibility study. But I think that's something that the town of North Brookfield should consider. Looking at all those options and having some community engagement, having a public comment period, and having an expert review the feasibility of establishing a regional, and establishing a regional with who, right? You have the various Brookfields, and I think there's a possibility there. But I think that is the challenge, not just here, but across the Commonwealth.
All right. Have you ever developed a long-term strategic plan for a municipality?
Long-term strategic plan. What I have done when I first took over as the town administrator in Templeton is we had about $700,000 in our stabilization account. I'm proud to say after when I left, they had about $1.5 million in their stabilization account. So what we did is we worked with the board, we had tweaked the financial management policies of the town, where we've also created an infrastructure stabilization account over there, putting more money in reserves, because you never know when you need to utilize those reserves. Because quite frankly, the select board have to make some tough decisions at times. If your budget, if you don't have enough in your revenues to cover your expenses, it's either you go for the 2.5 override, you use free cash or stabilization to balance the budget. But at the same time, when you're using, and I'm aware, I talked in the search committee, really smart people there. You got some good finance committee members that you've utilized up to $900,000 of one-time monies in the past, but you've cut that down, and that's the goal. If you're going to use one-time monies, you want to strategically have a plan, a 3-year plan to get out of that, to fully balance your budget.
So I did hear a little bit about your work with the Templeton budget and that process. And I know you covered a little bit answering the previous question, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because that for us is a struggle, to say the least. Can you talk about that?
On budget reduction methods I've utilized, or what?
Yes.
Oh, great. So I was trained by, when I first started with the town of Templeton, I worked with Carter Terenzini, very seasoned town administrator, very well respected. And one thing I learned is consolidation of departments. Very effective tool to essentially take departments, like if you establish a Parks and Recreation Commission, you also have let's say a highway department, you have a building and grounds department. You take all those, let's say you have a director in each one of those. You take all those, you create a public services director to oversee all the other departments. And essentially you're not paying 3 directors, you're paying 1. Those are consolidation efforts, because remember, when you have a full-time position, you're paying, let's say $70,000 for a full-time position, if that's the rate of pay.
Plus benefits.
Exactly, that's what I was just getting to. You also have to consider a family plan. You have to consider health insurance, you have to consider dental, you have to consider post-employment benefits and the long-term impact of those. So any way you could cut back on expenses and plan for the future is an effective way to do so. There's certain costs that you can't control, like I mentioned earlier, Worcester Regional, your other expenses, but you already did the aggregation of buildings, energy, electric costs, savings there. Looking at other potential benefits, right? Like your health insurance split, right? For example, if you have a 75% where the town's paying and a 25%, is it worth looking at going 70% or 30% where the employee's paying 30%? All those options are on the table, and the board has a lot of discretion unless it's in a collective bargaining agreement or something else where you have to negotiate that. But those are all methods and things you would utilize. Until I go through your budget process with you, I wouldn't really exactly identify everything. I would, for my first month here, would obviously be looking and examining what would be good and bringing those options to the board for consideration.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Turn. Describe a time you had a conflict with an employee, a board member, or a crisis in town and how you handled it. What was the resolution? Did you learn any lessons and anything you would change in how you approached it?
Well, in Templeton, I made the decision to try to do an intermunicipal agreement for veteran services. And the reason why is because I felt by going in with Gardner, we would offer more services to our residents, because if the town has their own veterans officer, and keep in mind there was a vacancy in this position. So it wasn't like I was trying to eliminate a job. There was a vacancy. We had the veteran service officer for the city of Gardner interested in taking on the town. But whenever you do something like that, I was looking at it so much from the cost saving standpoint. I may have angered a board member, right? That felt like I was trying to end veterans programs, which is not the case. I was trying to expand veterans programs by allowing veterans to go to a place where they have office hours throughout the week, as opposed to one day for 3 hours. But then I get the support of the select board, so I had to not pursue that, and we actually ended up hiring a good veteran service officer, and I respected their decision and moved on.
How would your previous coworkers describe you?
It depends on which one you talk to.
Okay. Pick one.
I would say they would consider me fair, but they know at the end of the day, all my department heads that I've worked with know that it comes down to cost savings, right? So I made the decision, and we had paychecks in Templeton, but Harper's was cheaper. So I made the decision to switch to Harper's. And I had some departments that weren't so happy. They came in and I said, look, reality of the situation is we gotta save money. And if this is gonna result in savings, that's my decision. And I think they respect that. They may not like it because the paycheck system was easier to operate, but once I make a decision resulting in cost savings, I think they respect that.
Union negotiations.
Oh, I love union negotiations.
Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So in Phillipston, actually, I don't have any unions over there, but in Templeton, I had a few unions, and since when I was there, I successfully negotiated all those contracts. We also did a wage and compensation plan study, which was helpful in being able to set the rate and have that discussion.
Let's talk a little bit about that. How did that work?
The wage and compensation study?
Yeah.
So what happened was we secured the funding for a wage and compensation study. We went out, we had Don Jacobs, went out, we put out the quotes. He was the one we went with, and they reviewed all the job descriptions, updating all the job descriptions. Before we update them, obviously we sent them to the employees. They were each job, and they were able to provide feedback on that. And they were able to do a community comparison to see whether those wages were comparable and what position should be paid what grade level should be each, and the steps for each. So it actually helped me, and I was actually successful in moving up a lot of the wages, pretty much all of them, for the town of Templeton. But it took me time, we had to go through the budget process, and quite frankly, we got it done. And it was a study we were able to use as a guide for union negotiations, for non-union pay raises, for any position, and the board had that information available to them.
Did you find it helped with recruitment?
I find recruitment to be, it's actually interesting to say that, I don't find recruitment to be the main driver of money. I believe it's to have that the employees trust you and the morale in the building, where they want to come to work each and every single day, where they want to get things done. Money's a factor, but I don't think you could pay somebody $250,000 to be a town administrator, but if you're miserable every day to go to work, is it worth it? I don't think so.
Ralph?
What do you consider your overall greatest strength and weakness?
My weakness is socializing too much at work. I do, when people come in, I talk to them, residents, town employees, because I want them to feel like they're being heard, right? So when somebody comes in, they have a complaint, the most important thing to do is to follow up on that complaint and to send it to the appropriate department and let them know that you followed up. You never make a promise you can't keep. So I tell people I'll follow up. So my greatest strength is coordinating with departments. My biggest weakness is socializing too much.
All right. So that's, I got a follow-up question for you for that one, and that involves the next area of, the next topic that we're going to cover with communication is, so you said when someone comes in with a complaint that you like to take that complaint and address it and give it to the department head that would be in charge of clearing that up. How do you deal with a department head or an employee that neglects to follow up on that?
They don't follow up and do their job,
Yeah.
then they will be spoken to. And if that doesn't work effectively, then there'll be a hearing where they'll be allowed to appear and have their own representative.
So how do you get, what would you do to assure that they follow up? Like you'd say, hey, this is it, get back to me with an email, with a call, with a text. What is your preferred method in dealing with a situation like that?
Email, because that's written. And I say, please respond by so-and-so. And I mean, generally, a lot of these, and when I say complaints, it could be as simple as a pothole, right?
Sure. Potholes aren't simple here.
No.
No. But go ahead.
But generally, you get complaints. And quite frankly, I have to do my due diligence to see if the complaint has validity before I even move on it. But if it's something like a pothole, if it's something like, you know, the sidewalk's broken apart, somebody could trip over it, you know, liability for the town. It's really following up on those in a timely manner, because should it be reported and you take no action, then you're kind of getting into a predicament where it could be negligence. So acting fast and appropriately is the most effective method.
Excellent.
The hearing process. Do you have experience with that?
Oh, plenty. Union, non-union.
Union.
Union's a little bit different, depends on the collective bargaining agreement, but let's say if a union employee were to do something, you would have to provide written notification, so many days. They're allowed their union representative or legal counsel, however they prefer, and you provide them notification in the mail. And you set a hearing date and you sit down with the employee.
And you've been through this?
Yes.
Ralph?
I think we've answered some of these, or we can extrapolate some of the things you said to answer some of these questions. What do you have for ideas for economic development in North Brookfield? Do you have some ideas that you can?
Housing's a crisis in Massachusetts, and there's a lot of funding available through housing. Obviously, depending on the community, I don't know what your housing priorities are. My experience has been taking old school buildings and turning them into a nice secure facility, providing significant, because once you go from a property that was town-owned to now it's now on the tax rolls, you've created all that new growth. And that new growth goes into your 2.5 increase the following fiscal year. So it's really being able to target development, but continuing and following up, whether it be something as simple as listing properties available for businesses to come into your community. It could be just something simple on the webpage that shows the properties available and people expressing interest, putting that out there through whether it be social media or whether it be through your website. I find the website to be an effective tool by putting up news and announcements and engaging the community.
Can you describe any experience you've had with grant writing and securing funding for municipal projects?
I've worked on CDBG grants, community compact grants. CDBG grants, I would prefer to bring somebody in that specializes in that field, because we're talking about federal money, so you want to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. But I have some experience in that. And I also created a grant writer administrator role in Templeton, where that individual was tasked solely just writing grants. And if you have somebody just solely doing that, they could secure significant funds for the town.
So how do you pay that person if you don't have that, the money in your budget to afford? Would they get would the grants fund that, the grant writer position?
Well, how I did it there is I waited till I had enough funds available within 2.5 to create it. I think it took about it was a select board priority, and I think it took me 2 to 3 years, but eventually we created the position. Within 2.5. Since I was the town administrator in Templeton, we never did a 2.5 override. We tried the debt exclusion, but it failed by 2 votes. For the bridge.
All right.
Social media.
Oh yeah,
It's
interesting.
It's interesting, and it's becoming a significant force, right? It is, in my opinion, it's filling a void. Personally, I feel there's something helpful there. Yeah. Like your thoughts on it.
It's a tool. It's a tool, and how do you use that tool? How do you use your website? How do you tie your website and social media together? How do you effectively communicate? You utilize it, you get it out there, people get used to it, and they depend on that information. And you know what, if there's a way, like in Phillipston, for example, we have a church that puts out a bulletin. So I'll send out information through that bulletin, because not everybody's on a computer. So you really want to get to everybody in the community as much as possible. So yes, you have the website, you have social media, but if you have another effective newsletters, putting things out at your library, your police station, those are other ways to get information out. Through town meeting, those are other ways to do.
What about information back?
I've done that with the town, like I mentioned, I alluded to the Phillipston Town Common Study. The select board opened up the comment period through the month of July, where they could write me. They don't have a computer, or they can, they could provide the emails to me. And I gotta say, I was very impressed. We got a lot of feedback. A lot of people were very much wanting to provide what they thought should be done with their comment. And that was an interesting way, but it engages the community. And you know what? That allows the people that we hired, the landscape architects, to really come up with a plan, working with the select board, because ultimately at the end of the day, the select board has to make the decision. But at least they get to see all the feedback, what residents, I mean, we have some, in our common, we have some poles in the common that we would like to see either underground or pushed over. For example, that's one option. Putting up curbing around the common, that's another option. Having trees placed in aesthetically pleasing locations is another option. There's quite a bit of feedback that we received. And it's really good. I find it interesting. I read each and every single one of them, and I told the landscape architect, good luck, you're going to earn that $30,000 going through this and trying to figure out what you think would be best.
In North Brookfield, we've had some, probably like every town out there, we've had some difficulties coalescing. And social media really has helped, not helped in many ways. And of course, there's lots of negativity. Yeah. But trying to, I mean, do you? But I ask this question to a lot of folks that are involved in municipal government, because I'm still, I struggle with it.
New guy.
Is, even though you said I couldn't use that anymore. Is, I can't help to think that as ugly as it is sometimes, right? There's some truth, or there's some sense of truth behind it, or some sense of where people are at in their heads. And, let's face it, we've got 4 people in the audience here. Select board meetings, most times there isn't any more than that. People don't ask, people don't really listen, but the second something gets dropped in Facebook, they're on. And certainly, I do think COVID seemed to kind of it was almost like a steroid to that process. And I do believe in North Brookfield that I do believe that there is some possibility of using that tool to some degree or another to help us understand and help us kind of bridge that gap. And that, I guess that's really the what's behind my question.
I mean, I did see that you have your own Facebook page.
I do, and I'm struggling with how to and how not to. Still being a new guy, and it worries me. Because once you start something, it gets out of control really, really quick.
And it's delicate too, right? Because if you have your own town Facebook page, you have to obviously comply with the public records law. So you can't be deleting comments. You could turn comments off, but you have to comply with the public records law. And make sure you retain all those in case there's a public records request. I've had tremendous experience. I gotta say, Phillipson, I don't get so many of them. Templeton, I would always, felt like every week I had a public records request. It's just.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I felt like, one day of the week I was just doing public records requests or responses, but it's still the law. You got to comply with it, and that's what I find to be the challenge more with social media and the negativity. Right? Is it the negativity? People find it easier to go complain on social media than to just call the select board's office and register a complaint, or their highway department and register a complaint. It's just more convenient. And
yeah.
Maybe attention seeking, I'm not quite sure, I'm not a psychologist, but it creates a crisis in leadership in some aspects. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Describe the largest project or initiative you have professionally been involved in.
It's Baldwinville School project. I mean, I say that because that's a $30 million project, and that was a public-private partnership. Also, I didn't mention this earlier too. When I say public-private partnership, we had a Community Preservation Act in Templeton as well. Phillipson has it. There was about a $1.8 million or nearly $1.9 million commitment that went to town meeting that folks committed for affordable housing that received the support of the town. It's one of those old school buildings where, quite frankly, probably would have cost the town of Templeton by $500,000, if not more, to tear down that building. But instead, they're going to preserve the historic aspects of the building and create housing that's much needed in the Commonwealth.
What was your role in all that?
Coordinating. I put out the bid package for the disposition of the building. I worked with the developers after the select board awarded to bring the articles to town meeting, worked with the CPA because they had to put in a CPA application for the funds. Then after the CPA brought it, they actually bring the article to and then the warrant goes to the select board, and then, the process. I don't want to, but that was my involvement in that aspect, and really just making sure that we're coordinating, because we were also redoing some piping underneath to make sure that it aligned with their project, whether the water line, the sewer line, all those different various aspects. So it's a lot of various different departments were helpful, making sure that everything lined up perfectly for the construction schedule. It took a few years, because a lot of the funding was held up in the state.
Sure.
But eventually they secured the necessary funding to move forward and close on the building. We had a developer designation agreement with the developers after the select board awarded it, until they closed on the building.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna skip to the next topic, personnel. What would you describe your leadership style as?
Caring but effective.
Okay, can you elaborate?
Well, you think about it, you have an employee that shows up to work late, right? I really don't know why they're showing up late, but you know, if it's one time, okay, it's a one-off. If it's a continual thing, okay, well, we have to have a discussion. It could be something as, I don't know until I talk with somebody, put myself in their shoes. And if it's a reason that makes sense and I talk with them and everything works out, well, that's the caring side. I'm not gonna write them up, I'm not gonna do any of that. But if it becomes a continual problem, then I have no other option, because then I would be establishing something where one town employee says, well, this employee comes in at this time, why do I have to come in at this time? So you gotta lead by example. And I have to show up on time, like everybody else. So if you see something where somebody's not showing up to work and everybody else is doing so, it's setting a precedent for others to not do the same thing. And you can't allow that. You have to treat everybody fairly and equally.
To piggyback on the leadership part of that and being involved, if you're in the office and you hear because you know we have the accountant, the treasurer, the tax collector, all board of health, all in the same office, town clerk, assessors. If you hear a resident that's in there and starts to get a little bit loud or out of hand, how long do you wait before you get involved? Do you get involved?
Well, I guess that's a very open question. If they're just raising their voice because they're frustrated about their tax bill, I mean, if I don't feel like there's an imminent threat, generally if you wait a little bit, they'll diffuse, right? And it's really having department heads that, I gotta trust in them. But
Mhm.
I feel like the situation's getting out of control, that yes, I have to step up and say, is everything okay here? Just so they know I'm a presence in the building.
Okay, I like that. Go ahead.
I want to go back to the list here.
Okay.
You know? When you were asked what your leadership style was, I guess I understand your answer, and I understand why you answered the way you answered. But I think I look at it maybe a little different, and maybe the second bullet point in this kind of goes along my lines of thinking. What methods have you used to collaborate with staff and support collaboration between departments, right? So for me, when I take the question, what's my leadership style, right? Because leadership is much more than disciplinary processing and how to keep everybody in line. To me, you know, it's important, but it's not the most important thing. The you know, as a leader in my career, you know, it's getting people to you. If you're leading, then you're hoping folks are following. Okay, and I guess let me ask that: how do you get people to follow you? What style do you use to get people to follow?
It's a balance. It's trust. Trust is important. But it's also being kind, but not to the point where it could be mistake kindness for weakness. It's a fine balance. And it's something that each person's different, and you just have to evaluate based upon your interactions. And, you know, because at the end of the day, you want to work with everybody, right? Everybody has their job. They know what they have to do. And quite frankly, if I don't have to go to a department, that's a good thing. Because I'm able to work on projects and do what I need to do with the select board goals, and to focus on what I need to do. Because I have my own work that I have to get done. The accountant knows what they have to do. The treasurer knows what they have to do. They all know their roles. They all know their jobs. If I'm going down there, that's not good. I shouldn't have to go down there. I think it's effective to have department head meetings where everybody communicates and they're all on the same page, and to have those discussions. And if somebody has an issue with something I may have said or whatever it might be, I always leave my door open. It's one thing I have always done is I always leave my door open in my office. So any resident or any town employee could feel like they could come in my office and talk to me. That's why I always leave my door open. Unless I'm on an important call or I'm in a meeting, then I'll shut it. But for the most part, I always keep my office door always open.
If I could jump on that a little bit, if you don't mind. Earlier you mentioned that there's other things more important than paying people money, and it was motivation and morale. So what kind of style do you bring to improve motivation and morale if it's necessary?
Actually, I mentioned this to the search committee. It could be as simple as just bringing K-cups in if you have a Keurig. It could be as simple as bringing in apple cider donuts. The little things matter. But also, talk with people. How's your day going? How's everything? Hear what they have to say, right? Because, how was your weekend? What did you do? Those are discussions you have around the coffee machine. Because let's face it, like you could, people aren't robots. They just don't sit behind their computer all day and just do work.
Some do.
Very few. But I agree. So it's really when they get up, they get their coffee, they socialize, and they're energized, and then they go back and they do their work, and they do better work because of it. And you don't want to be that person that people are like, oh, because discipline isn't the option. That's like last resort stuff. But if you have a good team, they all work well together, they're all doing their job, I'm not going to shake that up. I'm not. Budget's balanced, things are getting done, budget versus actuals are getting done. The select board's getting their information, finance committee's getting their information. Why am I going to go in and shake things up when I don't have to? But if those things aren't getting done, yes, I'm going to ask questions. What's taking so long? I'm working on this report, or I got to get this to the Department of Revenue, or Division of Local Services. So you got to take all that into consideration. And then if it's a select board member that's complaining about something, or a finance committee member, you could get back to them and say, look, they're going to get to it. They're just finishing this up. I had a conversation,
Don't make me gavel you down.
Joe's he's a good guy. He writes good emails too.
Are you done?
Yes.
All right. So what is your approach to employee performance evaluations, professional development opportunities, and how do you ensure accountability?
Great question. I've always encouraged.
Thanks, Mary Beth gave it to me.
I did not.
Did you really?
I did not.
So, if you have a town clerk, right, they can become a justice of the peace and do marriages.
Yep.
So let's say the town clerk here doesn't have that. That could be something, professional development, that they could look at doing and taking on. Or Mary Beth, right here in the select board office, going through getting a Massachusetts certified public purchasing official designation. There's professional development, you have collector school. It's really, when you do the evaluation, there should be a section there where you would like to see the employee do. You obviously have a discussion with them before you put it into something that they could look at doing. When I say look at, you want the employee to be involved in the process just as much as I am, right? If the town clerk is not interested in becoming a justice of the peace, well, do I push that or do I not, right? It's one of those things where you want them to want to do it just as much as you want them to do it. So it's encouraging these and just maybe putting out these options that are available, this professional development that are available, the collector school, the treasurer school, and it could be as simple as the town just paying for it to continue their education.
Well, last one on the list here, which I'm very interested in, but you've kind of realize I already asked half the question earlier, but. Personnel policies. Employee handbook. Development of policies. Experience?
Fortunately for me, when I took over both towns, they already had pretty good policies on the books. We looked at tweaking them here and there, but they already had pretty good policies. They're not challenging to do. A lot of communities already have really good ones, so it's really just kind of taking what the select board's interest, because you're the policymakers, right?
Mhm.
I make recommendations to the board. I'm like your coordinator, if you will. And it's really what the board wants to see as policy and what your employees, you think, it's finding that right policy, right? And there's a lot available. And it's really, you could take one from one community, another community, put them together, and you could establish a really good policy. It's really not that difficult to do. It's just a matter of getting the documents in Word and making the draft, or converting it from PDF to Word, and making some tweaks here and there. And you know, sometimes policies, you sit back and meetings, you get your first draft, you review it, you say, well, I like this, but I really don't like that.
Mhm.
That's your decision. And I want to step up, you know, I have my authority, you have your authority. That's something we have to work together on. And whatever you want in that policy is what I would carry out. You're the policy making board. But if I notice a problem, of course I bring it to your attention.
Is that good? Do either of you have any more questions?
I have a particular question. I'm not sure I heard it earlier. I might have heard your answer to this already, but I'm not sure. You've been in Phillipston for 4 months, and you got the town meeting warrant passed in record time, and you did a great job, but you want to leave. So you're
Actually-
looking to leave, it looks like.
Actually, I was looking at doing both towns.
Both towns, here in Phillipston.
I already spoke to the chair in Phillipston. I believe I could make it work. You have your select board meetings Tuesday nights. They have their select board meetings Wednesday nights. I think it's something I could work, and I'm up for that challenge. I've got several years as a town administrator, as chief administrative officer. It's something I could do effectively for both towns. And the chair that I work with now knows my skills. I'm very happy that they brought me on. In a unanimous vote, and I think I could do both in an effective way and serve both communities.
So how do you balance it? Who comes first? Do you have a conflict? How do you make a decision in which town comes first?
I gave it some thought. What would the schedule? How I would look at the schedule is Wednesdays I would be with Phillipston, and Fridays you're open Monday through Thursday. You have your select board meetings on Tuesdays, and Monday, Tuesday, Thursday with Brookfield. And of course, any calls I get from the board members or anything, I would follow up on, you know, after my working hours there. And the same vice versa. I wouldn't be doing Phillipston work on North Brookfield time, or I'd be doing both, you know. That's how I was looking at doing it. And it's a good question, because I thought about it a lot, and I really like Phillipston, and I really think I could do a lot of good things here in North Brookfield.
Do you have anything else?
That's all I have.
Any follow-ups?
No, I'm curious on the.
All right, well, we'll get there in a second. So, does anybody in the audience have a question? Because we have our town accountant, our finance chair, we have a member of the,
Town historian.
oh, I'm not to him yet.
Oh, okay.
The search committee, and we have the Parks and Rec chair. So, do any of you have follow-ups?
Yeah, I have a follow-up on a question you asked about grants. We don't have the CPA. How do you deal with matches for grants?
I was involved in Templeton with a park grant. Fortunately, we have the CPA to fund.
Right, we don't.
You don't, but you have free cash, and you have other options that you could utilize for the initial funding, because the park grant, I believe, is 75% reimbursable, if I remember at the top of my head.
70%.
70%. So yes, we would front money, but 70% of the money would come back. So it's really more of a discussion, recommendations to the board, how they would do it, what project.
Well, part of my question is not just on a specific grant, it's, you know, you said you did hire a grant writer, which would indicate that you do look for a lot of grants. So there must be a lot of matches involved in those grants, because most grants do involve matches. So, you know, just in general, where does that money come from without a CPA? Because we don't have a CPA, and we generally don't have a lot of extra free cash. So, I mean, I guess my point is even a grant writer worth it in that case?
Well, until I start here, I mean, granted, the board were hiring me, if I started here, I'll be able to see exactly where you're at and what other alternatives or methods you utilize. I mean, you have stabilization, there's various different aspects you could utilize, general fund budget. It's just a matter of prioritizing it within the budget. And, you know, until I see the project, until I see everything, I have to kind of look at where the project is, timelines. But that's a challenge, right? Do you look at adopting CPA here in North Brookfield? You know, that could be another option.
Well, they did, I believe years ago, and didn't pass.
What was it? Do you remember the vote?
It was a long time ago. It was when it was first introduced, I believe.
Well, let's not, we don't need to go down a rabbit trail like that right now. We can,
So,
you know.
But there's options in just reviewing all those.
I have another question. Did you have a question?
Joe, Sheila?
Joe?
And so, we really didn't talk about the prospect of you doing both jobs. So how would you be managing that? Are you saying that you would be on site 3 days a week?
Correct. And 2 days in Phillips. So it'd be a 5-day work week for me, with 3 days going to North Brookfield and 2 in Phillips.
Now, if that proved to not be working, how would you get around that? I mean, what if you found that this required 4 days?
Then I would consider options. I don't believe that would be the case. I'm confident I have the skill set to do both effectively.
Well, your only other option would be to quit in Phillips Center, quit here, right?
And it's having that discussion with the board. Like, I wouldn't leave a town high and dry.
Yeah, no,
You know, I give plenty of notes, plenty of time.
I believe that, but again, absolutely, yeah. It's just that, again, we didn't discuss that, so it kind of threw a bowling ball down this way. But it's a lot of work.
2 annual town reports, 2 budgets, 2 warrants, absolutely.
What about participating in any other committee meetings? Like, would you participate in finance committee meetings?
Well, I've done so.
Or any other, be available for, and they're generally on all different nights of the week.
Well, that's what's so great about Phillipson is they usually have their select board meetings every other Wednesday. So let's say there is a meeting on a Wednesday, or let's say I could make that all work, I can still come in and do that. I'm gonna prioritize based on meetings and whatever. If the finance committee wants me to attend one of theirs meetings, obviously I would do my best to be there. Select board meetings I have to come to, you know, so I believe I can make it work.
Sheila, did you have anything?
Yeah, did you hold any other municipal positions aside from town administrator?
I did. I was a city councilor for the city of Chicopee. I was on the school committee there. I was on the conservation commission.
I'm kind of talking like treasurer, accountant, town collector, anything like that.
No, I've always worked well with them.
One other thing you might consider is this is a new position for North Brookfield, relatively. And your public face is gonna be important. People around town are gonna say, oh, what's this new TA guy all about? Especially considering the last attempt at filling this position, so, you know, your public persona is gonna be important too. Just to put that out there, you know.
Absolutely, and that's why I tried to make it an effort, like, to, let's say, go across the street, grab a pizza, be seen in the community, hold copy hours, do things like that, so the public knows I'm accessible and they can get hold of me. But that's important, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Ralph had one last question.
It doesn't have to do anything with that, but have you ever worked with a grant writer?
A grant writer?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Person who had, that was their job, and how did you evaluate their performance on how many grants they got, or how does that work? We don't have a grant writer, so how does that work?
Well, I think the goal with the grant writer, obviously if they get a grant, right, you're thrilled that they did so. But it's really putting together the correct application for those competitive grants. Whether you're going for bridge funding, whether you're going for, I mean, those are highly competitive grants. And I would do it based upon a combination of grants awarded, but also grants submitted. Because you're not going to get every single grant that they put in for, but as long as they're doing their due diligence and working hard. And when they do get a grant, I'm also overseeing them through the process, whether, because I have a Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasing designation. So it's very important that we put that out to bid properly, and that the project gets done correctly, and that the grant, looking at all the terms within the grant itself, because there's a lot of stipulations in grants that you have to be compliant with, like community compact, you have to get a report over to the Department of Revenue. I believe it's within a year or two. But keeping track of all that and following up and watching the process as they go through it to make sure that they're staying on their timetables. Because so it's prioritizing workload. What needs to get done, when that needs to get done. You have your agenda, you have to get it posted within 48 hours. It's knowing all those things. I know all those things because I've been doing this for so long. And I'm not saying that to be in an arrogant sense. I'm saying that because I'm familiar, I've been through this. I know the open meeting law, I know the public records law. I'm familiar with all the aspects when it comes to municipal government. You know, that's why I took it a priority. I got my education in public administration, and you know, I didn't go because there's some folks, a good friend of mine who just got hired, and who also works as a treasurer in Phillipston, just got hired as Barry's town administrator, who went municipal finance route into town administration. But I went a different route. But we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But I think it's working effectively as a team to get things done.
You good, Ralph?
I'm good.
All right. Do you have any questions for us?
Yes, do you adopt select board goals each fiscal year?
Don't make me gavel you down. We haven't had really an opportunity to do anything like that. There's been a lot of fires, yeah. But we try. We try to talk about what our goals are. So,
Out of fairness, we have taken on a lot of debt exclusion for projects. A lot of our project leaders are no longer here. Most, if not all projects, at least the stages we're in, should end at the end of this year. It's all hands on deck. There really is no time or opportunity to talk about goals other than finishing as well as can be done what's already been bitten off. And unfortunately, at the end of all that, the projects, you know, the best you can hope for is completion. but there's the financial ramifications that come into effect when that's done. So, I think my answer to your question
That's a good answer.
is, ask me next year. Hopefully we feel different.
No, I appreciate the honesty, and I think that's something that at some point the board probably wants to do is start establishing goals set it. Like I'm familiar, I've been through the process with the board setting a goal setting retreat. We establish a set of goals that board members would like to see accomplished, and setting a timeline, whether it be fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 30, of when we think we can accomplish those goals. I mean, because it's important. You're absolutely right. You got to keep your own house in order. That's the top priority, keep your house in order. But at the same time, you still want to have your eye in the future and have a timeline of when you're going to get things done. And it could be as simple as a smaller goal, but working your way up. But you're absolutely right, you got to get...
Well, to be quite honest, I think a big part of our hope for this role is to help get us to a point where we can start looking forward.
And that would be my goal, is to get you where you want to be and to get this town where you're setting goals and what you want to accomplish, the board wants to accomplish, where they see the town. You're the elected officials. My job is just to carry out your goals, but at the same time, make sure your town is run effectively day to day.
Any more questions?
When do you usually have your town meeting?
Usually in June.
Okay.
Yep. Somewhere around the 15th, give or take. Sometimes we're late.
That actually works perfect because Phillipston's is early May. So if yours is mid-June, that actually timeline works out.
Well, we
perfect.
usually have a special in May.
The
Tie it
first
up.
week of May,
Yeah.
first Friday in May is usually, it used to be the special town with the annual town meeting, but then they put an article on to move the annual into June because of all the state numbers and the cherry sheets. So it's usually the second to third week of June.
Yeah, we usually always passed over everything on the annual and then did another one in June, so.
You don't try to have it where you just have one town meeting?
What do you mean?
Well, I guess it depends on the community, right? Like Templeton would have a special town meeting, a fall town meeting, and then an annual town meeting. Phillipston generally just has an annual town meeting. Of course, if there's a petition, citizen petition, there could be a special. And then, so I guess whatever the board wants to decide as their goal for holding the town meeting. So, no, that's why it was just...
Well, usually it's June. And like Sheila said, we have the special in May. But we've also had instances where we've had to have special town meetings, at a selectmen's meeting or somewhere for a particular purpose, whether it's an unpaid bill from the previous year that surprised everybody. Typically we have the one in June and then we have one in the fall. It would be nice if they were a little less occurring, but.
That's all I have for questions. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to come out here. It was a nice, beautiful drive from Phillipston. I came from work here, and it was such a nice day to drive in, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here and interview and for your consideration for this position.
Well,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
So, all right. I guess there's nothing else. We're not going to do a public comment period. You already asked your questions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Great. All in favor?
aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.